I've decided to start my journey in the far west of Cuba, at the tip of the tail of the crocodile-shaped island. I'll then visit the faded splendours of the capital, Havana, before continuing to the farming provinces of Sancti Spiritus and Camagüey. My journey will end in Baracoa, where Christopher Columbus is said to have erected a crucifix and exclaimed that he had just discovered the most beautiful place in the world. There are some clichés I don't want to avoid. In Cuba, the cigar is brandished like a communications weapon. My first stop is in good company, with a young tobacco grower who received the highest accolade by winning the Habanero Prize in 2007 for the quality of his harvest.
I could say that my tobacco is the best in the world, but I really can't do that. But for me, it's a marvelous thing. It helps me to relax. It gives me immense joy. It's my companion. It's always with me.
My name is Luis Prieto Dia. I'm 39 years old. I live in San Juan y Martinez in the province of Pinar del Rio. I'm a tobacco farmer. Here in San Juan y Martinez, you can say that it's the Mecca of tobacco. You find the best soil in the world for cigar production. It's an area covering 13 to 14 square kilometers, with no volcanic earth. But there are plenty of rivers. The trade winds blow through here. We're close to the Tropic of Cancer and the soil is sandy. People say it's the best place in the world because there's an alchemy between the land, the climate, and above all, human know-how.
Se habla de que es la mejor tierra, es tierra, clima y cultura del hombre.
Some people have tried to plant seedlings from the Valley of Vinales in other Latin American or Caribbean countries, but it hasn't worked. They didn't get this unique flavour, so the seed is nothing without the soil.
The tobacco plant is made up of 4 levels. The leaves on the first level are for lightness. They help the cigar to burn. The ones on the second level give the flavour, and the third and fourth levels give the cigar its character and strength.
After soaking up the goodness of this providential land, the leaves are taken to the tobacco house. In the 16th century, the Taino Indians introduced the Spaniards to the pleasures of the dried tobacco leaf, which they called cohiba, and this led to the first large-scale tobacco plantations. Today, it's a flourishing trade. Over 100 million cigars are smoked worldwide every year. Lewis tells me that the only virtue required to grow tobacco is patience. The warehouse has many openings for the trade winds to blow through. The breeze gently dries the leaves, turning them into delicate membranes of gold and filling the growers' coffers with riches.
All the production from my farm is gathered here in this building. I can't say exactly how many, but there are about 5,600 to 5,700 bundles of tobacco leaves. With this harvest, which represents one season, we obtain about 250,000 manufactured cigars.
I leave Lewis to caress his plumes of smoke while I cover the final few kilometers of the Valley of Vinales. I plunge into the landscape dotted with strange magots. They're gigantic limestone mounds pierced with hundreds of caves where runaway slaves used to find refuge. I've been told about a group of modern-day mystics known as Los Aquaticus. They live on the hillsides and believe water has curative properties, which mean they do without modern medicine. I come across a group of peasants. They are Aquaticus, but they're wary of me because a few months ago a Spanish documentary described them as the last representatives of an ancient visionary sect. But the story is a surprising one. In the 1930s, the youngest son of a Tónica Izquierdo was at death's door. The doctors could do nothing and advised her to prepare for the inevitable. But in the night, an apparition told her to bathe her son and to pray for his salvation. The next day, the child got up, fully recovered, like Lazarus raised from the kingdom of the dead. News of the miracle spread, and every day new followers joined them. The popularity of the new faith did not find favour with the local authorities, and Antónica Izquierdo was shut up in an asylum. Today, only a few families have remained faithful to the tradition.
Faith. You must have faith. That's the main thing. Water is the same for everyone. If you see someone is sick, you don't think of giving him an injection or treatment. You give him a bath. You take this water and put all your faith in it, and the pain goes away. You still feel it a little, but it's bearable.
It's not for me to judge anyone's faith. I know it can move mountains. I'm more surprised by the unusual status that the Aquaticus hold in Cuban society, which is one of the most highly policed in the world.
I've travelled all over Cuba, and I've never needed an identity card. I don't have one.
When he goes out, if someone asks for his papers, he says he doesn't have them. They say, "Why don't you have them?" He says, "I don't have an ID card. I'm a member of the Aquaticus." They make a phone call to find out who you are, and that's it. But you, if you were Cuban and didn't have your papers when they stop you, they'd give you a fine.
Never us.
I leave Emerito. He gives me a final piece of advice. In everything you undertake, you must have faith. Whatever you're doing, you must have faith.
Yo desde el río Toba, yo a La Habana lo traigo, de la zona de Baracoa, Baracoa ciudad primada, mañana es domingo, ay cutibiri, cutibiri, ay cutibiri, cutibiri, yo que soy de Monte Adentro, esta fiesta no se acaba. Kiribá, Kiribá, lo traigo del río Toba. Kiribá, Kiribá.
¿Qué está con nosotros? ¿Cómo se escucha allá?
You know, everything is expensive here in Cuba. For example, we wanted to travel in 3 cars, but we decided to save the petrol and come in 2 cars. We've managed to fit all the family in 2 cars. That's how it is. Anyway, you have to carry on. You have to struggle because things are worse and worse. You have to struggle, work, take risks. It's difficult.
It's hard. It's hard.
So life is hard, But you still get the feeling that there's a lot of joy.
Oh yes, that's a characteristic of Cubans. Cubans are happy. They joke about their difficulties. For example, we like to make jokes about the everyday problems we come across. Cubans are like that. They're cheerful, they're happy. I want to go north, over to the United States.
I want to go too.
It's everything a person could want. A nice house, a nice car, good food. It's what everyone wants. Money, a house, and health. Especially health. That's all I want.
Hey, wouldn't you like a bottle of rum? You can buy one for us. Shall we go? We'll see you at the next stop.
My next stop is Havana. Travelling in this old American car which defies the years, I think about what I've learnt from my encounters. Having faith and defying adversity with cheerfulness and a smile are essential precepts when you live in Cuba. Time seems to stand still in Havana. Its nostalgic embrace plunges you into the pleasures of a bygone age. It slides along in gentle fatalism. For me, the architecture is a delight, and the action of time on the patina of the walls catches my eye. Of course, that's the view of a traveller who relishes these facades and their columns eroded by the sea. They come straight out of a film set. But for the residents, the city is dying, and they are powerless, watching it crumble away. The marvellous thing in this slowly advancing decrepitude is the energy that seeps out of the walls. The people of Havana keep their city alive with love. One of them devotes all his energy to embellishing its streets. I meet Salvador. He's taken over Callejón de Jamel to make it a street of musical and visual invention.
I've lived here for a long time. 20 years ago I started painting at the end of the street. I've carried on and never stopped. It was like something magical happening in my life. That's how I analyze it and feel about it. It was really a special experience that I had. A huge strength and energy swept all the way through me. I finally got to where I wanted to be by creating a monumental work dedicated to African culture and its presence in the Caribbean and throughout America. This work is about defending a cultural identity. Because unfortunately, unfortunately, the black people have been blasphemed against and criticized. They've been humiliated, put into slavery, tortured, and cast aside by the phenomenon of racism. And these cultures that are so beautiful and so rich in artistic elements have been ravaged.
Han sido saqueadas.
But Salvador isn't the only person who paints on walls. Other frescoes decorate the facades of Havana. The heroes of the revolution are honoured on every street corner. The Cuban government makes sure that its citizens don't forget, for revolutionary iconology is a political weapon. I have a rendezvous with history. I'm visiting Perfecto Romero at his home. At the age of 20, he learnt the rudiments of photography and introduced himself to Ernesto Guevara, known as Che. The commander asked him where his gun was, and Perfecto showed him his camera. I ask him what he thinks about the celebrity status of Che and his face being splashed on cigarette packaging.
Yes, of course, that appropriation bothers me. And you know, I've always thought that if they hadn't killed Che, he never would have become this icon. It was a mistake on their part to kill him, and they made a lot of mistakes. In killing these leaders, they made them into heroes. They became personalities who were adopted as symbols of the struggle. Although Che is dead, he's still alive for young and old alike. Sometimes I give someone a photo of Che and they're even more grateful than if I'd given them money. And they use it. They put it up on their wall. They bring up their children by showing them this photo. To me, he was a man like us. He was a simple man, but he still had new ideas to change the world and offer people a better life.
A better life. For the time being, everyone's still waiting for it here in Cuba. I imagine Che watching this setting sun. Would the Argentinian commander really be satisfied with the fate of his adopted island?
Yo voy a explicar lo que pasa en Cuba para mediar el normal. Cuando vengo mirando, yo voy a aprovechar. La chica tiene ser similar, ser sexual. Yo estoy cantando, mira, vengo poco a poco. Cuando vengo.
Yo me llamo José Antonio Urruti Mazó, normalmente de Guantánamo, 3-7 de Prada Aguilera, reparto San Justo. Mi trabajo y lo que me gusta a mí es la música, el rap cubano representando Cuba, hip hop cubano. Yo.
I meet Tonio on the Malican, the seafront in Havana. Passionate about his art, he introduced himself as a hitman, an assassin who uses his wits to attack injustice. When he heard I was making a film about Cuba, he said, "If you really want to see Havana, come with me to my neighborhood. There you'll see the real life of Cubans, not the one they want to show to tourists." Clearly, I couldn't pass up the invitation.
I don't know if our situation is due to the economic embargo. That's certainly one of the reasons for our difficulties. You know, the United States declared this embargo many years ago. Perhaps once the blockade is lifted, the situation will improve. Everyone knows how to survive economically. But do you know how long this has been going on? We've been living with this embargo for 50 years. But we've survived it, even if we've only had bananas to eat. We're very strong, and I like that.
America's economic embargo on Cuba is an aberration. It's the main argument used by the Cuban government to explain the collapse of their economic system. But the embargo isn't responsible for the crushing burdens borne by the Cuban people.
No, it's true that some things come from the embargo and others don't. Freedom, for example. That's got nothing to do with the embargo. Whether I can speak freely with you, that's another problem. What I like is making music. Sometimes I'm singing and I get asked for my papers. If I sing for tourists, for people from other countries, I get taken to the police station. Just because I'm singing. I'd get picked up and held in custody. But what have I done? I'm only singing. I've committed no crime. I've done nothing wrong. I've never committed a crime, never stolen anything, nothing like that. No one's ever accused me. So why was I put in prison for 2 months? What we'd like is to have a little more money, to be able to communicate, to visit other countries. The same as you, to work and visit other countries, to explore other places. God gives us a limited time span, and we'd like to see new horizons, to get to know other people, just like you're now getting to know us.
I remember when I was little, they were the police motorbikes and I was captivated by Harleys. We were all fascinated by these motorbikes. Since then we have this passion, this drug that got into our veins. Then as soon as I had the chance, I bought one. Here in Cuba, all the motorbikes we have are very old. They date from before the triumph of the revolution. Around 1965, the police got rid of their fleet of Harleys. After that, no more Harleys came into Cuba. No spare parts either. We've had some difficult years because without spare parts, we've just had to find ways of keeping all these motorbikes going. Look, the original is about half the size of this part. It's much smaller. That's an example of the things we have to invent here in Cuba. It's for the indicators. It's a tiny part that goes here. It's very expensive and you can't find any in Cuba anymore. Thanks to people like him who are interested in electronics, they can make the parts for us. We can use them on our motorbikes and they're very good quality. We have no choice. There's no other solution. We'd like to have original parts, but you can't find them. We've made all sorts of adaptations to the mechanics on our Harleys. We've replaced original pistons with pistons from Soviet cars. We've had to use car wheels for our bikes and to adapt car tires to put on them. We've made all sorts of innovations to keep them in working order. It's our passion. You know, it's what we love.
Getting out on the road. Thinking of nothing apart from the open road which offers itself with no conditions. Infinite freedom. I leave Havana, this melting pot of energies, desperately waiting for a new wind of revolution to come and refresh its dilapidated facades and to revive the hope of a better life. I arrive in Cienfuegos, a little architectural jewel and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But I've heard that the town houses other treasures, in particular one of the oldest printworks in Cuba. I have an appointment with the manager. The place was founded in 1898. As I go inside, it feels like a living museum.
The workforce is very important here. A real sense of belonging has developed. It's as if the workers were the owners of the machines. When you have the human capacity that we do, there are never any problems. They always move forward. The workers will always overcome obstacles. They'll repair something 1, 2, 3, 4, 100 times without a problem.
I'm the only one who repairs it. No one else knows how to. I repair the parts in the workshop. When it breaks down, they fetch me from home, because I'm the only one who works on this machine.
The creativity we rely on wouldn't be the same if new technologies came in. Of course, it would be good. We'd obviously be much more productive than we are now. But the workforce would lose their skills. All the ingenuity and creativity we now have would be lost. With new technologies, you work less, and so there will be fewer jobs. That's not the aim of socialism. Our aim is to maintain jobs so that all the workers can take something home every day. Their daily bread, their food.
Quite simply, ensuring jobs for all. It's a communist maxim, but also a simple truth. I think about Europe, where so many workshops have been emptied, leaving only the machines with a few people to watch over them. I travel on, as in a journey back to the future. Moving from the old linotype machines to the massive shell of a nuclear power plant. Welcome to Cuba. Throughout its history, Cuba has always pioneered the use of new technologies. It couldn't resist the temptation of nuclear power. The security guards who intercept me ask me to continue my journey, but one of them needs a ride home. A few kilometers away in the Ciudad Nuclear, the nuclear city. It was built in the early 1980s for the Russian and Cuban technicians working on the construction site. It was during the time of plenty when the island received aid from the Soviet Union. But the fall of the USSR swept away the joint programs and the walls of the power plant started crumbling.
It's the only construction of this kind in Cuba, the only one of this size. We had to specialize. I went to the Soviet Union for 3 months to train on the internal workings of the reactor. But before the work was finished, they cancelled the project.
This was the first nuclear plant. There were to be 2 others, in Pinar del Rio and Holguin. That was the government's plan.
After what happened in Chernobyl and Fukushima, are you pleased this reactor isn't in use?
I don't agree. Maybe they didn't have the right security procedures. I don't know what happened over there, but it wouldn't necessarily have happened here. With our methods, we had very high-quality work and good training. I don't think what happened over there would ever have happened here.
It was kept going for quite a long time, but I think it's the end. That's how it goes. But now it's part of history. It's a memory for Cubans.
In the 1980s, access to nuclear energy was claimed as a right on the international stage. For Cuba, it was a failure. But who knows? Maybe the island will turn to greener forms of energy in the near future. But those are just the thoughts of a traveller who's losing himself in his journey. Is there a real tradition of horse breeding in Cuba?
Yes, there is a tradition of horse breeding in Cuba, but since the stud farms mainly belong to the state, there are very few individual breeders because the administrative procedures are very complicated. And you need a lot of land because horses eat a huge amount. That's why most farmers breed cattle. A lot of people have horses. Usually they only have one. They use it to get to work. But for some people, a horse is a real means of survival. They have carts in the villages. It's quite a common form of transport. But there are very few private stud farms like mine.
I'm continuing my journey towards the town of Puerto Padre, keen to meet yet more people who earn a living from the riches of the Cuban soil. I join a convoy of maqueteros. They're taking me to see another symbol of Cuba: sugarcane. There was a time when Cuba was the world's largest sugar exporter. Today it's been overtaken by Brazil, but sugarcane is still the main agricultural crop on this island.
This work isn't done all year round. Harvesting is done over 3 or 4 months. We're coming to the end now. At the beginning, we worked the whole day without stopping, but now it's almost over, so we work more slowly. I can earn about 45 euros per month, but sometimes I can earn up to 30 euros in 2 weeks. There are more experienced cutters than me, and they earn much more than I do. Yes, of course, there are machines. But the problem is that some areas have lots of stones, and others are very bumpy, and the machines can't cut there. In those cases, we cut the canes. But yes, we know that if progress continues in this way, there will come a time when we won't be able to do this work anymore.
Sugarcane was meant to bring prosperity. In 1970, Fidel Castro gave the order for a decisive effort. The whole population was put to work to achieve a record harvest of 10 million tons. Unfortunately, the party's fervour wasn't sufficient. The target wasn't reached, and the failure plunged the island into bitter disappointment. Sugar crystals weren't destined to be Cuba's passport to untold riches. Communist regimes have never been kind to religious institutions. The church in Cuba suffered in the Great Revolution of 1959. For many years, the clergy were gagged and religious practices were given little encouragement. In 1998, Castro allowed the visit of Pope John Paul II. Since then, the church has become stronger. Some see it as the only force of resistance to the totalitarian regime of leader Maximo. I've come to pay homage to the patron saint of Cuba. Every year in September, thousands of pilgrims come to the Basilica of Our Lady of Charity of El Cobre. Before the altar of the Virgin, the pilgrims lay medallions, clothes, photos, or other offerings.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo.
A prayer to accompany me on the final kilometers before Santiago, the second largest city in Cuba. Santiago echoes with the sounds of a more distant continent. Africa is its foster mother. In the city suburbs, bewitching rhythms rise up towards the rooftops. I've been invited to a Santeria ceremony. It's an African-Cuban religion which combines Catholic saints with orishas, or African deities. The practice of Santeria has always persisted, even though it was forced into a secret existence from the time of slavery.
You invoke the orishas, the saints, when you're facing a serious problem like the illness of a family member. That's what's happening in this evening. The young woman has cancer. She wants to consult the pantheon, and the babalo, the officiated priest, will tell her which saint we must sound the drums for.
The beating of the drums stretches into the night, and the babalo goes into a trance. He's the only one who can receive and interpret the divine intentions. Tonight, they're playing for Oshosi, the god of hunting. He defends justice and the persecuted. The young woman who organised the ceremony wants to know if her illness will get worse.
There are many followers of Santeria in Cuba, particularly in Havana, where almost everyone practices. That's the place with most believers, but they're all over the world. I have Santeria godchildren living in Italy, in Germany. Santeria has never been banned. The politicians have never interfered with the practice of this religion. 99% of us Santeros are revolutionaries. We've never had problems at that level. The state doesn't bother us. On the contrary, it helps us.
No power has ever been able to stop the practice, since it's based on a mystery that I mustn't reveal. I was asked not to film the final trance. In Cuba, boxing is a religion. Its champions are revered for allowing Cuban pride to flourish in the great Cuba-USA matches. Boxing has brought the most world titles to the little Caribbean island. Here in the Reparto Los Olmos neighborhood, young people receive free training. They know the Cuban school of boxing can be a good route to fame and wealth. There's no professional boxing in Cuba. Everyone fights as an amateur. That's the wish of Fidel Castro.
Me llamo Nonifoto Boirayuez. Soy jefe de cátedra y en ese boxeo lo soy y tengo 59 años.
¿Y tú en qué momento?
We're an underdeveloped, third world country. And in addition, we have the embargo. We have to cope with an economic crisis. We don't have the facilities of wealthy countries. But with the means at our disposal, we are still succeeding in developing our sport in Cuba. And we train a lot of Olympic and world champions. I've worked with athletes who have been junior world champions. I've also worked with Causa de Lich, a world champion, and I trained Angel Moya. I've also looked after boxers who were in the national team, and I have others who are still in it.
But I've also heard that Santiago is an incubator for the new stars of Cuban boxing. I ask him why.
There's a rebellious side to the people of Santiago. That's reflected in boxing. That's why we have so many champions and why we're so good at the sport.
My name is Alejandro Medina. I'm 13 and I was champion in the 11 to 13-year-old category. I live in Santiago de Cuba. I started in the sport with the support of my mother. I think that boxing is a very fine sport. My father was a boxer. That must be why I have the sport in my blood. I want to become Olympic champion to help my family.
With the blood of Santiago flowing in his veins, Alejandro will surely one day go and challenge the world powers just like the great heroes of his country. On the tip of the island lies the first town to be established in Cuba. But to get there, you first have to cross the Sierra del Purial. The strip of tarmac on the steep slopes of the Sierra is La Farola, the pride of Cuban civil engineering. It was built in the mid-1960s. It is this road above all that has enabled the town to come out of its isolation. In the dark hours of Castroism, Baracoa was the equivalent of Siberia. People were sent into exile there to keep them away from Havana. Today, with the development of tourism, the little town is restoring its reputation.
You used to arrive in Baracoa by sea. because the farola, which is the link to the rest of the island, didn't exist. This remoteness is one of the reasons why this port has some unique characteristics, such as its environment, its traditional cuisine, and its local dialect. It protects these traditions that are so different from those of the rest of the country. From my point of view, Baracoa is a town of poetry, of legends and myths, of old traditions and lush vegetation. Magic and realism are combined here. It's what specialists call the magical realism. It's an enigma to everyone. Whether traveller or resident, everyone will talk about the mystery that prevails here.
I'm going to savour this distinctive identity at Pablo Ribera's dinner table. He has a small restaurant in the town. Recently, the Cuban government started allowing this kind of private initiative. Entrepreneurs are subject to very strict legislation. Whatever their turnover, they have to pay a fixed tax every month.
We opened this restaurant 4 months ago. A new law was passed not long ago. It allows individuals to improve their economic and social standing. This law was advantageous for all Cubans. That's why we were able to open this restaurant. It's been well received because of the service we offer, the discipline and hygiene that we operate under, and also because the house is very old.
But before working on the gastronomic subtleties of Baracoa cuisine, Pablo was a maquetero, and not just any maquetero. He was an outstanding cane cutter who made a fortune thanks to his capacity for work.
I won 19 refrigerators and also a car. I won trips to Havana, where I stayed with my family in good hotels. Once I donated all my harvest in the 1990s. I did one harvest for free in aid of a charity fund for students. Don't laugh, but I got everything through being a machetero. A house, a car, and my wife. Harvesting sugarcane gave me everything. I went to Fidel Castro's box on the 1st of May. I met Raul too. And like in boxing, when you have champions, I think that I'm also a champion of sugarcane harvesting.
As a farewell, Pablo pours a last draught of the Cuban elixir into my veins. It's so that you come back, he tells me.